Hey everyone, I'm Devon Coombs, CPA, MBA, ex-Google and Deloitte. Today I'm going to be covering Chapter 1 and Law 1 of my books, 10 Laws of Finance. You can't fix what you hide. And so what do I mean by that? Hiding things personally is very similar to hiding things financially. And we all tend to distort reality based on our preferences and our narratives. And this especially holds true in finance. And so I'll explore how that impacts finance and then why accounting and financial analysis is the cure for this. We all tend to distort reality when we're hurting. So imagine you're walking into a room and you're catching up with a friend and they tell you they had a really bad fight with their spouse. They're telling you, hey, they never listen to me. They don't really care. I'm the only one trying in this relationship. Now, as a friend, it's really tough in that situation to understand what's really going on. Did she do something wrong? Was the relationship flawed? It's really challenging to know what's happening, what the truth of the matter is. You might dig into it and find out something extreme, like your friend had cheated on his partner or vice versa. Or you could find out something simple, like maybe they're dealing with their own issue, maybe have some kind of hurt from their past and they're causing some kind of issue in the relationship. Or you could have something as simple as they're just hungry or they're having a bad day or an off day and they're just venting to you. You really don't know what is happening in that situation until you start investigating and start getting some facts. You start getting truth once you start asking some grounding questions like, well, tell me about what happened here. Once you start doing that, you will start getting a picture if they snapped first or the other person snapped first, or if there's something more systemically wrong with the relationship. So I'm trying to get here is that the moment of truth really appears because you are asking the right questions. If you don't do that, that's where you see people go a little crazy in their relationships and in their personal lives, right? Once time, I have this story from one of my classes a few semesters ago, where I had a student who was really struggling. And after a second exam in the class, they stood up, convinced they had failed in the middle of the exam and said, this test was unfair. You're the worst professor I've ever had. And all of these other students are going to rally with me against you because there's a printing error in this exam and it's all your fault that I'm failing. Actually, it was just a double-sided exam. And I told everyone it was a double-sided exam originally and that the other 100 students who had taken the exam, no one else had a problem. His reality was different than everyone else's reality. And that reality caught up to him because when he went up and said it to everyone in the class, everyone kind of looked at him like, hey, buddy, maybe you're the one with the problem here. And later he came to me and apologized for the way he acted and had told me, hey, listen, I'm really struggling in this class and I was just looking for someone to blame. The truth finally caught up to him, right? That's what happened there is in that moment, he was making a world for himself where he was the victim when he was in control of his circumstances and he wasn't studying. And so he needed a bad guy and I needed to be that bad guy for him in that situation. But progress for him required that clarity, which required for him to confront the truth that he didn't have the right studying habits in the first place. He needed to recognize those correct study habits. He needed to recognize that the world wasn't out to get him. He was in control of this situation before he could take a step forward. Because people avoid the truth, and avoiding the truth avoids accountability. So this problem scales from people to companies. Organizations deal with the same issue that people deal with. They have distortions based on biases, they have incomplete information, or they look at financial information in a way that will benefit them. And when you distort the reality, you can't grow your business. Imagine you are surveying your employees. I did this when I was at Google Cloud. You'd regularly survey your staff and say, how are you doing here? Are you overworked? Are you underworked? Everyone has a bias, right, from their standpoint on how to fill that out. That might be different than the reality of the situation. Someone gives me a form and tells me, says, hey, are you overworking or underworking? I have a strong inclination to say, I have way too much on my plate. It's almost not wise to tell someone, hey, I actually don't have any work to do. And I know you just did layoffs last month. Why would you do that? That's insane. Like, you'd want to say that you're busy and give the perception that you're busy so you don't get more work or you don't get laid off. The truth holds true for high performers. So underperformers tend to exaggerate how much work they're doing, and overperformers tend to underreport it so they can take on more work and look like high performers. And so both patterns make it really tough to manage a business. And leaders need a way to ground themselves in the truth. And so that's where finance comes. And so I'll bridge that to my own personal story, right? When I was homeless, I had ran a recording studio for almost 3 years in North Hollywood. My mom had passed away when I was 15. I had never met my father. At the age of 18, 19, I started that recording studio, and it just bombed. I did not run the studio well. I had no clue what I was doing. I had no business being in business yet. I had no clue about business. I just was overconfident, and I was a kid who had grown up in the music industry because I was in Los Angeles and a lot of my friends were in it, and so I decided I'd go do it. And it was an accomplishment. I built it from scratch. I was able to learn a lot about business, but I failed spectacularly right around the Great Recession. And what did that result in? I was living out of my car at 21 years old. I had $10,000 in credit card debt plus a car loan, and my recording studio had completely collapsed. And my dream of being in the music industry was gone too. My life felt like a blur of guesses, and I wanted to blame the world. And I had every excuse: family full of addiction, hurt, mom passing away, dad gone. No one would have blamed me if I had blamed the world. But if I blamed the world, where did that get me? I'm still stuck in my car. If I blamed myself and said I'm worthless, I can't do anything, that didn't help me either. So I started looking for, where is truth? What is actually objectively true that is within my control, that I have agency over? And it turned out it was finances. And so I actually took out a notebook that I had and one of the pens on the floor of my car, and I started writing. And I wrote a bunch of stuff down, and I realized none of it I could know if it was true, because I didn't have a friend that I was talking to decipher if I was full of it or if someone else was full of it or where my biases were. What I didn't know was how much money I had in my wallet and how much money I made that day. I was working nonstop as a bartender and a waiter in some nice restaurants, and I had made some cash from my shift that day. But I also had to drive to that shift and drive to the other jobs. I needed to eat and have my groceries. I had overdrafted the night before, so I had an overdraft fee of $15. And I was pretty tired at the end of the day. I wanted to have a little fun, so I spent some money at a bar. And at the end of the day, I was broke again. So I started the day with $60, and I ended the day with spending $60, so I had $0 in my wallet. So I was completely broke, living out of my car, in debt. And after a full day of work, I was as poor as when I started, even though I worked all day. And that was a moment of reality for me. That was huge, right? It's amazing that you can look at your financials, can give you this kind of objective reality. I have somewhere to go here. And it gave me this hope of, if I can get in control of these numbers, which I had never done before, I've never looked at numbers like this, if I can control these numbers, I can start having a trajectory towards growth rather than stagnation. I had that glimmer of hope. It was the first lie I couldn't hide from in my life, was looking at the finances. And this holds true for businesses. So the tool that rarely lies is following the cash. I've been in finance for over 18 years now, in accounting and consulting at top industries, and cash doesn't have an opinion. It does not distort, defend, or rationalize. It's as real as it gets. Your business generates cash or it doesn't. Money gives us a way to see truth when stories, biases, and incentives can get in the way. And so that's why this class is so important. And understanding accounting is important. That's what accounting is understanding the history of your dollar, understanding where it exactly came from. Once you understand how people account for their finances, they won't be able to BS you anymore. You could BS people, I hope you don't, from this class, but no one will be able to BS you, and you won't be able to BS yourself anymore. Once you understand your finances, you can change that narrative entirely. I went from understanding myself as an ambitious young guy who was conquering the world and started my own recording studio at 18 to a loser. I was a financial loser. I had no money, and it was all my fault. That's a very different narrative by looking at the numbers. I have seen it with businesses. One of my first consulting clients that I had was this person who, on paper, just had a life you would envy. This guy was remarkable. He was living in Bali one day, then he was going to Europe, and then he would live in Taiwan, and he was in his 20s, and he started his own marketing company. And he reached out to me, and he asked me, Devon, I am doing all this marketing through Upwork Online. I have my own clients, building websites, and I'm making over $100,000 a year, traveling the world, but I'm broke, and my wife told me I need to talk to you. My wife said I needed some help because it's draining our relationship, and I don't understand where our money is going. I asked him to put together financial statements for me and to show me his numbers. And he said, I can't do that. I just can tell you how much I made. And I said, we need to do that. My first 2 months of consulting with this person was just getting them to put how much money he made and how much money he spent in a given month on the table. Turns out that in one given month, he had made $20,000, and he assumed because he had one good month that his whole year was like that. He multiplied it by 12. Turns out he had many months that weren't that good. He had months where he made almost nothing because he was traveling and having fun, but he spent way too much. The guy was at expensive Airbnbs, partying, having a good time, and wasn't paying his employees on time, had never paid for taxes. He was in a really bad strait. And I had to be the guy to confront him and say, look at these numbers. Do they tell you you're a successful business person? And he said, no, I'm not a successful business person. I'm faking it. And I said, no, you can be. You had one good month. Let's replicate that month. We were able to replicate that month for him by looking at that number, figuring out what the drivers were for it, that he had some really good high segment profitable customers. We were able to manage his costs. And he was able to get that business to a $300,000 a year business in less than a year and get out of his negative cycle. That was all from looking at the numbers, having the courage and the ability to look at the numbers rationally. The most effective operators I've worked with in the world understand these fundamentals cold. If you're in marketing or finance or anything outside of accounting, you still need to understand this baseline. The best lawyers I've met, the best CEOs, CFOs still know the fundamentals. You need to know it. The tools don't change, just the zeros do. Like the same things that I did to get myself out of homelessness to becoming pretty successful in my career are the same tools that I used at Google to assess multi-billion-dollar deals. They're the same tools. So let's look at those tools and understand these equations. That's the whole goal of this first class, accounting as an exploration of truth. So the balance sheet is your snapshot at a point in time. It shows you what you owe at a specific point in time, what you owe or own. And so it's assets equal liability plus net worth. Net worth is also known as equity, depending if you're looking at a personal finance or a business perspective. Your assets are what you have, what you work with, the resources that you control, and those are funded by either liabilities, what you've borrowed, or equity, what you've personally contributed, either via your income or initial contributions or partnership contribution. On paper, we all have friends who look wealthy because they have a lot of stuff. They have a lot of assets. You might have a nice car, you might have a nice house, you have a lot of stuff. But they could be very poor, right? Just because you have a big house and a nice car, if it's fully funded by liabilities, you're actually over your head in debt and are in a really terrible situation. If it's fully funded by your net worth, that's someone who's actually really wealthy. These are huge different realities, and understanding how your assets are funded is key to understanding if a business or a person is financially successful. The next piece that plugs into that equity is your income statement. The real concept here is revenue minus expenses equals your profit or loss. So your revenue, just think of it as your money in, expenses, money out. We'll keep it simple for now. There's a lot of nuances we'll go over through this chapter. For me, money in was paychecks, tips, sales I was making. Money out was rent, gas, coffee, going out for the drink, right? For a business, your revenue is the sales you're making. Your expenses could be everything from your office to your cost of goods sold. If your expenses exceed your revenue, you have a loss. It's that simple. There's two different concepts, cash basis and accrual-based accounting, and then there's concepts in between those. The main idea is how are you standardizing this all to report it in a similar way consistently across different groups? And so GAAP financial reporting is called accrual-based accounting. Accrual-based accounting, you recognize revenue when a performance obligation is satisfied or the revenue is earned. The expenses match the revenue that they generated. And so that has to do with when are you reporting the revenue and how are you classifying the revenue and expenses. Cash basis accounting, you're just following the cash. So I want to be clear, these two tools never lie when you're looking at them. If I was to tell you today, if you've never done this, hey, put on paper, what are your assets, your liabilities, and net worth? Exactly everything you have and how is it funded? Also tell me how much money you're bringing in a given week, month, year versus how much you're spending and if you have a profit or loss. That will tell you more about a person than sitting down and talking to them for an entire day. If you showed me your income statement, your personal income statement, I could see exactly what you spent money on. I know what kind of person you are. I know where you're spending your money, where you're struggling, where your hobbies or your interests are. When I see the revenue coming in, I know how you generate revenue. If I see your assets, liabilities, and net worth, I know how solvent you are, how liquid you are, how much you can pay your debts, or if you are actually truly wealthy or if you are really leveraged, right? You have a lot of liability. So accounting is that bridge here. It shows you reality. It's just like bringing in the couple at the very beginning, your married couple who is bickering and saying, this other person's at fault, this other person's. How valuable would it be if you go like, well, let's look at everything that actually is happening, like the facts of the matter. And accounting gives us that grounding. It's governed by simple, unforgiving laws, and these two statements provide the objective truth of where you stand. profit builds your net worth and a loss consumes it. That's the foundation of everything else here. Self-deception in our finances doesn't stay contained. It leads to deception everywhere else. I've seen it in marriages. I've seen it in businesses where partners come together and one partner is contributing more than another partner. That can be really challenging over a long run. And that's where partnerships fail, is when two partners go into business contributing the same thing, own equal shares, and then one partner starts falling off. It becomes a real challenge to not just the business relationship, but to the relationship itself, the friendship that was built. And then that can contaminate other friendships and other relationships. And so I challenge you all through this process, not just to look at the numbers and look at this as just an accounting fundamentals refresh. It's really challenging you all to take a look at your lives. And are you telling yourself the truth with your business, with your personal finance? Are you telling others the truth? Because if you can't tell yourself the truth, you're not going to know where you are. And if you don't know where you are, we can't get to any desired future. We can't get to where you want to. So the steps to seeing the truth clearly, these are exercises you could do for yourself that I highly recommend. This is meant to be personal and quick, where you could do it in a small group, but just be careful with who you share the information with. What's your current financial position? List out your assets, liabilities, equity, and be honest with yourself. What don't you know about that situation? Do you not know how much you owe on your student loans? Do you not know how much interest your credit card bill is? Figure that out. Make a personal income statement. How much money is coming in every month? How much money is going out every month? And then tell yourself, what does that story say? What does that story say about your life versus what is the story you're telling yourself? And how does that differ? And can you bring some more reality and honesty into your life? And that's the beauty of accounting. The beauty of accounting is you can go in now and you can really understand the truth of your financial situation and start reframing your life accordingly. Once you really get a grip on reality and understand where you are, that's when you can bring yourself forward. For me, that's where I brought myself forward. I was able to go from there to, within a few years, paying off my debt, to years after that, saving up for a marriage and buying an engagement ring for my wife, to buying a condo, to taking care of my family, to being successful in the Bay Area. Those things compound. The honesty compounds. Once you start working with reality, it compounds. And that's what accounting is. It turns out the study of reality is hard. It's hard to know how complex entities move money. It's hard to know even how people move money. So you have to take the effort to learn. So the path forward becomes clear when you work with reality. And the way to work with reality and finances is to get a grip on accounting. And so get those fundamentals in order. My next lecture on this is going to be going over some more of the technical details of accounting, but I wanted you to understand those narrative components because those are essential to you succeeding in this course, succeeding as financial professionals, and just being good business people overall who are leading with integrity, honesty, with ethics, working with reality rather than against it. If there's more people like this in the world, more people being honest with themselves, we're going to move the world forward in such a better way. Thank you for watching. Please continue on with this course and let me know if there's anything else that I can do to help you all out, and have a great day.